I got to play Borderlands 4 early, and holy moly is there a lot to go over. But first, I want to say thank you to 2K for sponsoring this video. They flew me out to play Borderlands 4 in office and wanted me to give you guys my honest first impressions of the game, so let's get started. At the event, we had the option to play between Rafa, the Exo Soldier, or Vex the Siren, and I decided to go with Rafa because I wanted to see what his cool arm blades were all about. As soon as I dropped in, I was surprised to see that his whole melee action skill was just fully third person. So I made my way to some combat and started to get the feel of things. The demo we got to play dropped us into a story mission where we had to help a small town called Outbound and fend off some of the Order's goons. The first thing I did was test out my guns. I had a cool TDR pistol that homed into enemies and I could shoot out of the air, a pretty good Jacob sniper that had some really satisfying critical hits, and a Molly 1 SMG that swapped between shock and corrosive rounds, which was super helpful for a lot of these shielded Order soldier guys. And honestly, the best part about all of this was that the guns felt good. The bullets were fast, and pretty much any weapon I picked up felt good to use. I also got to try using one of the new ordnance launchers. In BL4, launchers, grenades, and probably a bunch of other heavy weapons now take up an ordnance slot. I think my favorite part about the new ordnance system is that they no longer pull from an ammo pool. They're just on a set cooldown timer. In previous games, I would run into the issue where, I would try and save my rockets, and by doing so, I wouldn't ever really use my rocket launcher unless I absolutely had to. But with this new system, I never feel like I'm wasting my grenades or rockets. I could just pull this thing out and decimate a bunch of mobs if I wanted to, and it'd be no big deal. Or I could save it for a little bit longer in case like a badass or something showed up and I'd have a good tool to deal with them. This one I got to use looked really cool, kind of reminded me of the Thunder Gun, and it shot these cool corrosive death orbs. I didn't hit anything with it in this clip right here because I was still catching my bearings and getting used to the sensitivity, but I'll show some more later on. The new Rev kits were also a cool addition to the combat loop. In previous games, a lot of characters had issues with healing and heavily relied on certain gear or moxie weapons for healing. And having to rely on those things just wasn't fun for a good chunk of people, but with this new system, every character can have health on demand to get them through a sticky situation. These also run on a cooldown similar to ordinances, and sometimes even have multiple charges depending on the parts you get. These also add some cool buffs, so they're multi-use. You can either save it for when you need health, or use it early on to get something like a fire rate boost for a short time, and that choice in combat is super fun to have. Anyway, it's time to slice and dice. Rafa's arc knives action skill was super fun to use. Basically, you just go full hack and slash mode. It also has this cool damage stacking property where the more hits you land on an enemy, the more damage they'll take. And if you right click while using arc knives, you dash forward and do this cool shock melee attack that was just wrecking these bad guys. The two action skill augments I got to see were really cool as well. There was one where you would start dealing corrosive damage and also kills would heal you. But then there was also one that I thought was really cool. With Dead Man Walking, your action skill wouldn't stop when the duration was over. You would just keep going, but your health would start draining. So if you had some type of good source of healing or just a really big health bar, it sounds like you could just be meleeing the whole time if you just keep the streak up. I think melee only runs are going to be sick in this game, especially with Rafa, so I just cannot wait to get my hands on this game. The third person POV definitely took some getting used to, but once I got the hang of it, it was a blast. After the town was saved, we met a guy named Rush. Seems like a wholesome dude that would always have your back, and we got ourselves a vehicle. With how open the maps are in BL4, being able to just spawn your vehicle pretty much anywhere was awesome for the exploration and traversal. And dude, exploration is a huge part of this game, and I love it. More on that later, but let's talk about the enemies. I think the enemy design in this game is honestly really good. I've heard a lot of people say in previous games, enemies just felt like different shaped health bars, but in Borderlands 4, I felt like every enemy required a different game plan from the last. I couldn't really snipe the heads off the guys with shields, so I was like, alright, eat a TDR throw, and laughed so hard when it just sent this dude flying. Guys, we can launch enemies in this game, it's happening! There were also these Warden guys. If you were able to get enough airtime using the new double jump and glide movement features, you could melee these guys, which is nice to have the option because I know people are going to want to do melee only runs. But they definitely required a different type of attention. With how high these guys flew sometimes, I couldn't use most cover, so I had to prioritize these guys. Some enemies had these things called traits, and at a glance, some might compare these things to the crazy mayhem modifiers that were in Borderlands 3, but I found these to be a lot more tame and less intrusive because it wasn't every enemy that had one of these traits. I think in Borderlands 3, there were drones that made some enemies just completely immune. Yeah, that was a lot to deal with. But some of these traits are just like, this guy's cryo resistant, but other times you might find a guy that drops a few grenades on death. This one guy had immovable, and if I had to guess, that prob means he's knockback proof, which that's going to be an anime battle for me. But yeah, traits are just a neat little layer added to combat to mix things up. Not a super huge deal, but still something you have to keep in mind. Except for Centripetal. This one seems a little busted. It caught me off guard. It pretty much just drops a black hole and sucks you in when the enemy dies. They did tell me that this build of the game had that damage way too high, but still seems a little too crazy. I don't know if people will like that. I thought it was a little funny at first, but I could totally see this thing just zipping you off a cliff to an insta-death and making a lot of people mad. I don't know. Anyway, let's talk about the big guys. Badasses were also super fun to fight. If you remember back to Borderlands the pre-sequel, they kind of did something where they balanced badasses in that game to be way more tanky, so they actually felt like something more than just another mob. And since they did that, they felt like they had an actual presence on the battlefield. And in BO4, it feels like they really built on that without just inflating health pools. I was getting too cocky with the mobbing and underestimated one. So I ended up dying, but I was like, this is awesome because the challenge and layers to the combat were so genuinely fun. Feeling the difference when I used a matching element on an enemy's health bar felt good, but it also didn't feel atrocious if I wasn't using the right element. And dare I say it, even using random white weapons I found on the ground was fun. I was very impressed how they balanced the game to feel like anything and everything is reasonably usable, but also somehow cram in the power differences and rarity without making high-tier guns feel broken and low-tier guns feel useless. When I found this purple Vladoff assault rifle and used it, it felt powerful. It felt like a great gun, but also didn't trivialize the game because badasses were still a threat to keep in mind. I had so much fun with its underbarrel shotgun, and I was so excited to just keep finding more guns. Speaking of, let's talk about licensed parts. It looks like based on the gun's rarity, it has the option to have more licensed parts to spawn on it. They told me purples have the ability to spawn with 4 and legendaries have the ability to spawn with 3 because their unique gimmick takes up a slot. Now I am unsure if they're counting the weapon's default property based on its own manufacturer in these totals, but it might be 3 extra for purples and 2 extra for legendaries in that case. Either way, it seems like guns are going to have a lot of variety depending on what parts you roll. And I think that variety is super cool, but I do have a slight concern. I'm mostly wondering how hard it's going to be to get specific stuff on your guns. If you're looking for a legendary gun that has both the Jacob's accessory for crit and the Torg accessory for explosive rounds, that might be a hard thing to find even with the new boss respawn options for faster farming. Now I know perfect gear isn't needed, but from what I've heard, a lot of people like having the option to reasonably get a specific piece of gear for certain builds, and with how this loot system works, that might be a little challenging. I will have to play the game a bit more to fully get a feeling about how the part system is, but I 100% like this system more than Borderlands 3's loot system. I just know a lot of people might not fully dig this, but I doubt that super specific part combinations are going to be super important for builds. You'll likely just be looking for one part and it won't be that bad to find. I picked up a lot of guns during the demo, and every single one I used felt good to use, and it was fun, so I guarantee you'll find something that you'll love just wrecking enemies with. While I'm here, can I talk about enemy death animations? They were peak. Ever since Borderlands 1, I really missed when I could send brain chunks flying miles into the air with a strong enough headshot, and it looks like they're bringing that back. The elemental kills look awesome. There's also these new explosives lying around everywhere that you could grapple and just fastball enemies with to goopify them, which was super fun. This also added just a layer of environmental combat that I really loved. And dude, I was straight up about to pee my pants at 2KHQ when I shot this mangler thing and its whole brain just fell out. Yeah, I love this stuff. Anyway, you guys want to see a mini boss fight? Meet Horus. He was one of those warden type enemies and he was really fast and just zipping around everywhere. And since I wasn't fully used to the mouse sensitivity yet, I was like, screw it, let's melee the flying guy, and it was actually working. I was able to use my double jump and hover and grapple abilities to stay airborne and follow him around, slashing him up. I will say the airborne melee fighting had a slight, and I mean slight, clunkiness to it, which was a bit odd to learn. Sometimes when I would try to swing at a guy above me, my camera angle would level out on its own. That's just a minor nitpick though. They're still working out some of the kinks, but it was still a lot of fun, and I got to melee a flying dude, and that's not something you've ever really been able to do in a Borderlands game. So I'm really hyped to see where this guy's skill trees go and all that stuff. This guy did have a small immunity phase, and I know a lot of you guys didn't like those in Borderlands 3, but I did did hear from another creator that upon refighting this guy, he didn't have an immunity phase, and it was just there for the story kill for story reasons, so that's cool. After I took his shield out, my underbarrel shotgun was recharged, and I straight up mag dumped this dude now that he couldn't zip around so fast, and it was a fun mini boss fight. But oh my god, just you wait to see what real bosses look like. But you're gonna have to wait to see about those. Haha, get left in suspense. Alright, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Everybody and their mom is asking, where's the minimap? And honestly, at this point, I was kind of missing it too. Now, I might be a little biased, but I think the minimap would benefit this game greatly. There were many instances where I felt like I could play aggressively and chaotically, but I was hesitant because I did not know what I was jumping into. With the compass system, it's just so much harder to pinpoint enemy locations and even look for second wins. I totally agree with Randy's idea of not wanting us to play the minimap, but I felt like I was looking at the compass longer than I would have if I just had a minimap. Now, this could have just been a skill issue. The compass does provide red dots that get bigger when enemies are closer, and then they also had 2 things on each end, so you know whether or not to look left or right, but I still think a minimap in this game would be beneficial for when you're in combat. That's not to say the compass is bad though. With the game being so open, the compass was actually quite useful when exploring. There's a lot of icons that show up on the compass that lead you to like cool side objectives and useful stuff, but if that type of stuff was on a minimap, that thing would be cluttered. So I feel like a minimap for combat, compass for exploration combo would be the best thing for the game. But enough on that, let's talk about actually exploring and what you can find out in the world. Dude, there's so many things to find, and these side tasks are actually beneficial in the long run. Doing things like securing safe houses or finding Claptrap's secret care packages. If you find one of these, you have to bring it to a safe house to get all the loot inside. On my way there, I tried throwing it at one of these mangler guys, and I was half expecting it to just bounce off its head and do like 1 damage. And one of the 2K homies was like, well, a lot of things on Borderlands explode, so it was honestly worth a shot, and it was so funny. Devs, if you're watching, please add that in. I think people would love that silly bit. Other than the cool loot you can get for doing these tasks, you can also unlock these floating tower things for map traversal, and also earn SDU tokens by finding secrets like echoes or vault symbols. I thought it was so cool that they included side tasks that were in the last games that didn't really do much and turned them into super rewarding systems that give you permanent boosts. The exploration and variety of tasks kind of reminds me of a Far Cry-ish gameplay cycle that really wanted me to just find all the goodies I could. And these boosts don't just stop at ammo upgrades. My HUD was telling me a vault key fragment was nearby, and with a little hot and cold gameplay, I found the piece. And trust me guys, you are gonna wanna find these. I really hope the abrupt black screen bit is driving home how cool I think this stuff is, but like before, you'll have to wait and learn about these at a later date. Suspenseful. The exploration also leads to more things like random events where rippers can just come out of the ground and fight you, side missions that can lead to some cool loot and experience, or even these randomly occurring battle domes. These put you up against a mini boss that you fought in the past. I accidentally stepped out of the dome though, and that canceled the whole fight. I think that should be a little bit more lenient, but it was super fun when I actually got the fight. I really enjoyed the gameplay and each layer of combat in this game. The guns felt good, the movement felt good, straight up throwing random junk at bad guys felt good. I barely scratched the amount of weapons that we will be able to use when the game comes out, and I genuinely think this will be one of my favorite games of all time, and I cannot wait to see if that is true. Now, to answer a question a lot of you guys are probably gonna ask. Gasmask, are you gonna do challenge runs for Borderlands 4? And to that, I'm going to have to give you a solid most likely. From the small taste I got here, I really want to get my hands on this game and explore every nook and cranny. But for now, we all have to wait till the release date of September 12th. If you want, you can pre-order now. I will have a link to that in the description. But anyway, that's going to wrap it up for this video. Thanks again to the homies over at 2K for flying me out to play Borderlands 4 and sponsoring this video. But until next time, breathe easy, homies.